Welcome back to Reliving Retro. This is Season 4, Episode 9. And if you're new here, we pick one game at random and invite a guest on to rate it every single week in the categories story, gameplay, visuals, sound, and age. And this week we have a very special guest on, and I'll let him introduce himself. Go ahead, man.
Hey, this is Tyler with my Retro Live. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Definitely.
So a couple of getting to know you questions, and I'm sure anybody coming here from Tyler's channel, you already know probably a lot of these, but for our listeners or our watchers, let's see, what was your introduction to gaming, and kind of how old were you, how it got started for you?
I started gaming way back in the 80s. So the late 80s, I was really introduced to gaming through the arcades, like a lot of people were, I think. And as a small toddler, like age 2, 3, my dad and my mom, when we were out on family outings, sometimes we take day trips to various places. Like I'm from Texas and from Houston, so we'd take day trips to San Antonio or Austin and Dallas and stuff like that. And we would go to various places, San Antonio, like SeaWorld, any kind of mall or theme park. Whenever there was an arcade present, we would go into the arcade and play the games. And yeah, so the arcades were where I got my start. That's where I cut my teeth.
Awesome.
Very cool.
What was some of your favorite arcade games?
At that age, my earliest memories of arcade games are probably games like Tubin and Burger Time. Stuff like that really appealed to a very young child, burgers and restaurants, the food items are your enemies and stuff like that. Or Tubin, it was like going to the pool, river rafting down in inner tubes.
Right.
Down the canals. That's a really underrated game, actually. I still really enjoy that game.
Do you like the NES version?
The NES version's good. Yeah, the Tengen version. We owned that one, and of course Pac-Man. Pac-Man was an early title. Probably Miss Pac-Man.
I was just gonna say there are people that swear by Miss Pac-Man over Pac-Man. Do you have a side, or do you like?
I'm one of those. Miss Pac-Man over Pac-Man. Yeah, definitely. I just love the speed. It's just faster.
Right.
And I just that's where I got good at Pac-Man, was with Miss Pac-Man.
Yeah, that's fair.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite genres of games to play nowadays?
Nowadays, I really still love, old school retro gaming, indie games, the games that are coming out these days from indie developers, really. I love playing those. I love all the first party stuff that Nintendo puts out these days. Still a big fan of that, and really enjoying introducing my daughter to those games, and we'll play those together. And then I really enjoy, I'm kind of starting collecting again with the OG Xbox. I'm really into collecting for that right now because the titles are really cheap right now, and I want to try to get in before they get really expensive. So
smart.
Collecting those again, it's been fun to collect those with my daughter, and Wii games. It's fun when we find it's crazy. We don't get to do it as often, but trying to do the same stuff that my dad and I did, but with her. Right. But yeah, other genres, RPGs. I love RPGs, and I'm always telling my buddy. We're always talking about RPGs, but I just never have the time to play them anymore. So really it's the quick arcade style, Horizon Chase. I think it's called Horizon Chase Turbo or something I can't remember the name right now, but I play that one. I'll throw that on. I'll throw on some. It's so crazy because with all the time that goes into content creating, right. I hardly have time to play leisurely play games anymore. Yeah, it's like if I'm playing a game, it's going to be for a video, and that's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Right. Yeah, it's like the whole reason why we started the podcast is because like we were talking about some old retro games that we had never gotten a chance to play. He had brought up Chrono Trigger. I never got to play it. I told him he should play Earthbound. He's like, oh, I never played it. So that was kind of the genesis of the podcast. And
Cool.
then we, then it's kind of like, oh, now I have to play this game. I have to play it this week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It becomes homework now.
Yeah, right.
It really does. Yeah. It was great. The video I just put out recently on Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion, I think it dropped yesterday.
Yep.
It was great getting to like kind of replay those games a bit and, get myself reacquainted with those memories that I have. But like outside of that, like I'm probably not I don't know if I'm gonna actually replay all of Metroid Prime. I did get the remastered one, which is pretty sweet. So
it looks awesome. It looks amazing.
It is really good. It's really good. But it also reminds me of how great the GameCube version is because, they're not. It's better. It's definitely remastered, but the GameCube, man, they had some great graphics on that title.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I think people were just really, they really kind of like pushed back by the sense that it was a first-person shooter now, and they were like, "This isn't Metroid," right? So that's why it was. It didn't really. People didn't really love it when it first came out, from what I remember, at least.
Yeah, I mean, magazines, I think the general public, it took some warming up because obviously we got the sequels, but so it sold well enough, and then it eventually got a cult following.
Yeah, for sure. All right. As for your YouTube channel, for anybody that's not aware, My Retro Life, you have a ton of like VHS tapes of when like your dad would record a ton of like video game related stuff. Obviously, like more than that, but you showcase kind of the video game, portions of what your dad had recorded, and it's amazing. It's from it. I think the first video I saw from you was where you and your cousins, I believe, from New York, would exchange VHS tapes where you would be like, oh, this is kind of what we picked up this week and this is what we're playing or whatever. And then you would send it to your cousins and they would do the same thing and send it back. And I'm like, why didn't every kid do that? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids didn't know they could.
Right.
I think a lot of kids, we benefited from having kind of techie family members, and so my dad knew how to do the VHS dubs. I remember him teaching me and my cousin Manny how to actually go from your video, like your NES, composite cable out into your VCR, and you had to have an understanding of how that all worked to get recordings. And then once the idea was planted, it was like, oh yeah, well, of course I want to record my gameplay footage. And I want to be able to.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great. We used to send those tapes back and forth to each other before the internet, because it was our glimpse into what we were playing. Because we were a long distance family. They were in New York, I was in Texas, and so it was great back in those. It's so crazy how innocent when I think back to the pre-internet gaming days. It's like you clamored over anything you could get your hands on when it came to gaming. Any magazine, any discussion with a friend or whatever. Like I think we were so obsessed, our own little Nintendo cult. It felt like, and I mean, it was awesome having gaming cousins. Because we'd call each other up all the time and just talk about games all the time. Send the tapes back and forth. Oh, what'd you get? What did Aunt Michelle get for you? Oh, you got this new game. Oh, okay. Can you send us a tape of that? Can you send us I want to see it, because it's so weird. They have to put in perspective. You couldn't just pull up YouTube and just watch clips.
Yeah. No,
there was nothing like that.
You couldn't FaceTime with somebody. Nothing like that.
You have to look at the back of the box and just get from a couple of still shots on the back of this box, take a guess, and maybe the artwork of the game, unless you had magazines to also show you more pictures and stuff. But that was it, just still pictures.
Yeah.
Or maybe game commercials on television,
Right.
but not every game had those.
No, I feel like it really just the AAA titles would have like the commercials, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
most people are probably going to buy those games anyway. So,
yeah, exactly.
um, all right, I got one more question for you. If you, and this might be a hard one to answer. So if you can't pick one, totally fine. But if you would say that there's like one set of tapes or one sort of like specific memory that for whatever reason may be triggering as your favorite one that your dad was able to capture for you, which one would it be?
I've mentioned this before on my live streams. I don't know if I've actually mentioned it in a video that it's my favorite, but it's got to be this moment that I guess he handed my mom the camera, and so for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, he passed away in 2007, and so the whole channel is meant to be kind of like just a legacy channel, showcasing his love for gaming and the way that trickled down from his love to all the family members and me especially, and using his old home movie footage that he recorded to tell that story and create content from. And so, but the moment that like, oh man, it just gets me right here. I'm like, this is like, I cherish this clip that it even exists, is in a video. It's the Christmas 1991 episode that I put together where there's just a moment where he lifts me to put the star on the tree. It sounds very like, it sounds kind of corny even, like I'm sure it's like a Hallmark moment or stuff like that. But it was a tradition that we had. I would put the star on the tree at the end of decorating the Christmas tree. Like my parents would do it. They knew that they wanted to decorate the tree a certain way, and I'd kind of help here and there. But it was always my thing. Like, I'll get to put the star on the tree, and my dad would always lift me up and help me put it on the tree. And that moment was captured. The only time that was ever captured was that particular year in that moment, and that part gets me. I remember when I first produced that video and kind of watching it back after I'd completed it and just like losing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a really, really special, tender moment.
Yeah, I mean, we have that tradition. I lift my daughter every single year to put the star on the tree. So, I mean, I think that would probably do it for me too. So I definitely don't blame you there.
And it's interesting because it's moments like that I think as we're living life, we often just take for granted stuff like that. It's like,
for sure.
And then when stuff happens and life happens and you lose somebody and like you're like, oh gosh, like that that was a really special moment. I didn't even realize it at the time, but that was like super special. So yeah, I'm so glad that that's on tape. That's like, and so much of it is on tape. I mean, I'm super blessed to have all the footage I have. There's a friend of mine who actually he said to me once on the phone. We were talking about the channel and just everything I was doing, and he said, Tyler, you have no idea how special this is that you have this. He goes, and his dad had passed away when he was, I think, a teenager. And he said, you have no idea. He goes, I don't have anything of my dad. Right. It's gotten to the point where I'm forgetting what the sound of his voice was. I don't remember what the sound of his voice was like because there was no recordings, no anything. And so, and I remember him telling me that, and I was just like, whoa, yeah, I know. It's super special.
Yeah, it's amazing. So for anybody who hasn't already, please go check out my Retro Life on YouTube. It's honestly it's one of my favorite YouTube channels right now. It's so good, and every single time a video comes out, me and my daughter watch it together while we're either eating breakfast or dinner or whatever. Like we watch it together. So
that's awesome. I love hearing that. I love hearing that families are watching it and father daughters, father sons, mother. It's super cool to hear that because it just makes it all the more special that all the stuff that he recorded and everything that he was and stood for still kind of in a way like alive and impacting people. And
Oh,
so
for sure.
it
It's
just
special to more than just, you guys, you know what I mean? It's special to
Mhm.
anybody who has that type of relationship.
Yeah, definitely. It's super special.
For sure.
Yeah,
Thanks for the play.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing it all with us, because I think everybody really enjoys it.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, you got
All
me
right.
a little emotional there for a minute.
All right. Well, let's lighten the mood and talk about killing some aliens.
All right.
This week we played Contra 3, the Alien Wars for Super Nintendo. Just picked up a copy actually, so pretty excited about that.
Nice.
Now, before we get into talking about it, Yaiser, did you have any prior experience to the game this week, or like was it just?
No, I had never played it before. I mean, obviously,
Oh.
I've heard of the the series Contra.
Yeah.
Everyone has, right?
Right.
But I had never played this one in particular.
Gotcha.
Glad you could be introduced to it. It's one of my favorite games of all time.
I had never played it either. I will say I owned it before when I used to collect, but I never really. But back when I used to collect, that's when I played games the least, right? Because my whole objective with video games then was get as many as possible, and it was never put the time into actually enjoying them. So I used to own it, but I never actually played it. I've tried the original Contra a bunch of times, and for whatever reason, I can't get into it. And so this week was really my first like legitimate go at Contra 3. And Tyler, obviously you said it was one of your favorite games. I'm assuming you have quite a bit of experience with this game.
I do. I really do. I got it when I was 6 years old. It was like the big birthday gift that year. And it was an imported version, just to show you, just to kind of, we used to import games. It sounds crazy. It was crazy back then. It's crazy now. There was a store in town that was, you had to drive out a little bit. It was a little further, but they specialized in import games. And, 1992 was almost unheard of.
Right.
And we got a lot of our games there, and that's where we got this game. Yeah, it was the big birthday surprise, and it was so good. I mean, I just immediately was blown away by it. I probably had played it at that store's like kiosks, because what they would do is they would put out all the new games, when they were brand new. And because I think if you look back at the footage, there's footage of me getting it, and I'm like, it's like I already know it's a great game. Like I'm already like, yeah, Contra 3, yeah. Like it's like I played it before, and so my earliest memories with it, I just remember loving playing it with my friends and co-op. My dad was never good at it. It was too much. He was a little bit more of a methodical gamer. Like games that you take your time a little bit more with it, and the really fast-paced run and gun, like Sonic the Hedgehog, fast-paced Contra action games like that. He wasn't great at.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I remember playing it a lot with my cousin. And then as the years went by, I started really, really respecting how beautiful the graphics were compared to the rest of the Super Nintendo library as a whole. Like it really stood up over the years. And just beautiful parallax scrolling, incredible boss fights. I mean, this is the stuff that Konami got famous off of,
For sure.
A lot of the developers that worked on Contra 3 went on to form Treasure. And you can kind of see it in these bosses and in this game, this kind of genius spark that was coming out of the game's design, and the boss fights, they're just epic stuff.
Yeah, they are.
And I love it. I could go on and on about it. I really could.
So how many hours did you play this week, Yaiser?
Maybe 2-ish,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little longer than that even.
Okay. I put about 5 or so hours into it, and Yaiser, you didn't beat it, right?
No, I didn't.
What was the farthest you got?
Ooh, it's tough.
I got to like the beginning of level 4.
Okay.
Right when that big ass ship comes over top of your bike.
I'm glad you got there.
I had enough at that point.
I'm glad you got that far though. because that's some dedication right there. That's the third level stage is really difficult.
It was tough. The final boss on stage 3 was pretty dope, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite boss fights of all time.
That's a dope fight.
Yeah. I got to the end of level 4. Wait. Actually, I think I got to stage 5. Is that the second top down?
Second top down, yeah.
Yep. I got to stage 5. Man, I had the hardest time with the stage 4 boss. And
the airship.
Where the missiles are flying and you have to keep jumping from missile to missile. Mm-hmm. The hardest time with that one.
The trick there is you have to just focus on taking out the arms of the shield barrier, and then it opens up, and but it's tough. You're having to jump from missile to missile.
Yeah, all while dodging projectiles, and
it's a very tough stage.
And the missiles blow up and they go away, and then once you take the shield away, then the boss starts firing like this, blowing up the missiles, and it's just like, man, like they could have chilled out a little bit on that one. That one was pretty tough. Although the boss beforehand was also really tough. But I mean, we'll get into like all the boss battles and stuff like that. But so Tyler, I'm assuming you've beaten the game before.
Oh yeah, I've beaten it more times on just the normal difficulty. There was one time I beat it on hard with my cousin, not my cousin Manny, my cousin Ryan, who he's in less of the home video footage, but he's been in some of the episodes that I've put out. But I remember he stayed over one. It was probably around Christmas. And it was probably Christmas that year because he came over that year for Christmas, and we stayed up real late trying to beat it on hard. And I think that's when we did. It's interesting because there's different, if you beat the game on easy, it literally stops. It stops before the ending, and it's like, what's wrong with you? You need to be playing it on normal.
Yeah,
it really tells you, like
I'm glad I didn't get that far.
Crazy. What this isn't. You must really be horrible at games. Play it on normal or hard. We're not going to show you the true end of the game unless you do that. It's back that certain games, and Konami was notorious with that. It'd slap you in the face basically for trying to get by on an easy mode.
Yep, them and Capcom, right? Capcom like Ghosts and Ghouls or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you have to beat it twice. So okay, I guess that's a way to make the game longer.
And so that was. I remember the first time playing through on the easy, and it was hard still even then. And getting to that screen at the end, and oh man, I got to play it on normal now. But it made it pretty memorable. I've beaten it. I've beaten it before many times. It's so difficult on the harder difficulties. That final boss is insane.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I got to the 5th stage on easy. So
I didn't even get past stage 1 on normal. I had to change that up real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge spike. It really is.
All right, but before we get into the ratings for each category, I just want to thank the new Patreon member, Matt. I really appreciate you joining up. And if you guys want to join the Patreon, link is in the description below. Starting at $2 a month, you can help support the channel. And you can join the Patreon to get your game played faster. If you want to suggest a game for us for absolutely nothing, that's totally fine. In the YouTube comments, they'll go to our master list. But the Patreon list is much, much shorter. And we play a Patreon game 3 times a season. So once a month, we play a Patreon game, and that's the way to get your game played way quicker. So like I said, $2 a month to do that. And thank you, Matt, again, for signing on. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
All right, so let's get into story. Tyler, would you like to start us off with story? You are the most well-versed with this game.
Sure. Well, I mean, this was a game that really wasn't so much about story as it was just high-octane, adrenaline-pumping, alien-blasting, world-ending action.
For sure.
I mean, the opening, how many ways to describe the opening just blows you out of the water with that. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the opening cinematic, but it's just so cool. I mean, this ominous city skyline, in the future. I think it says again future, and then the whole thing just gets destroyed, Independence Day style, and this evil, demonic, like alien head hovers over it. In 1992, when you were 6 years old and you saw that, it was just
mind blowing.
Couldn't believe it. It was so cool and very impactful. All you knew is that it was the end of the world unless you stopped the evil. That's all you got to do. So, the story in the game, I mean, for real, Red Falcon, this alien menace, as they call it. We didn't even know he was called Red Falcon much. At least I didn't when that game first came out. It was years later I learned that, it has a name, Red Falcon.
I had to read the manual to find that out.
Yeah. And so, the story is aliens are taking over. What you going to do? Grab your machine gun and your spread shot and let's get to blasting.
Yeah.
That's really all I used to take away from the Contra games. So there's not much of a story there. It's kind of thin.
Right. So what would you rate it out of 5 stars?
Because it's thin, I probably will dock that category.
Yep.
I'll dock it a star. I mean, these kind of games, you really don't need that. It's an arcade style action game. So I'll give it 4 stars. What was great about it was that we would kind of pretend like we were playing an extension of Predator or Alien,
right?
Alien movies. We had those movies as kind of these backdrops for what this game was going for. So we could use our imagination. The fact that there wasn't a whole lot of story there, you could really use your imagination as to what these characters have been through, what they're like. And that helped propel the story into your own mind. The fact that you could just come up with it in your head. So
you could even pretend that your names weren't Jimbo and Sully.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think in this game, it depends on the localization. I can't remember, but they're actually Lance and Bean, I think.
Okay.
In this one, and I don't know, there's some weird convoluted thing where it's like, I think one description of it is that they're the descendants of Jimbo and Scully.
Oh, okay.
And is it Scully or Sully?
So in the manual here, it says you're Jimbo and Sully, special forces comrades, just like your fearsome forefathers were.
Your forefather. Oh, and maybe the forefathers were Lance, and I forget. I just know I found this out recently. There's a really great nod to Alien and, Aliens. I think it's just Aliens. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lance and Bean it's like the names are Lance. They're basically, Lance Yaiser and Bean Henriksen or something like that, but they're names of actors from the movie Aliens.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh. And so it was like their own nod to the fact that they were ripping off Aliens.
That's kind of awesome. Great.
And I didn't learn that until just like 2 weeks ago. Somebody tweeted it. They're like, "Hey, did you ever notice that their names are the names of these actors from Aliens?" And it took me 30 years to figure that out.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Yaiser, for story?
So in the game, other than like the opening cutscene, it really doesn't give you much for story, right? But
right,
like you said, it's not what this game's about. I wish I had read the manual, because usually I do with these like this generation of games. I didn't read the manual, but I gave it the benefit of that. I'm assuming it explains some more shit that I don't know about. And I'll give it a 3 here.
It does. Do you want me to read the manual?
Yeah, read it to me. Maybe I'll bump it up a little bit.
It says the Contra legacy rocks on. February 14th, 2636. You are about to learn what it takes to be a descendant of the Commando legends Scorpion and Mad Dog. That is, now that Red Falcon would like to use your family as a toothpick. You're Jimbo and Sully, special forces comrades, just like your fearsome forefathers were. Nowadays, your weapons and maneuvers are much more advanced than they were when your ancestors saved the world from being skewered on by Red Falcon's fangs. and then it basically that's basically it.
Yeah, they're like the ultimate like alien vigilantes. Like,
yeah,
they were trying to almost do what like Castlevania was doing with the descendants, and
I was just gonna say the same thing. Yeah, it's like the Belmonts with Dracula. Yep.
Yeah. What did I say? I said 3. I'll stick with 3. I mean, it's still a little generic, I guess.
Yeah, to piggyback off of you, Yaiser, I do think the story is pretty generic. Again, that's not what this game is for. It's not what it's about. But that opening cutscene is good enough for me to bump it up. So I bumped it up to 3.5 because that cutscene is so good, and it does put you in the mood to blast some aliens. So I definitely think it's a good it kind of settles you in there for what you're supposed to know about the game. And a lot of Super Nintendo games, even back then, like they didn't do that, right? They were just like level 1, do your thing.
Yeah, just throw you into it, At least this had that cool opening cinematic.
For sure, which again, for its time, is more than most games gave it. So I kind of have to take that into consideration here. 3.5 for me. All right, moving on to gameplay. Yaiser, why don't you take this one?
All right, sure. So I couldn't find myself having fun playing this game. It's probably I'll put all that on me. I don't care. It's all on me. I was just terrible at it. I couldn't figure out how to be good at it. Right. Like compared to, let's say, the closest, I guess, comparison game that we played to this so far on the show was probably Wild Guns, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's gallery shooter, side scroller, shoot 'em up, it's slightly different, but basically same. Wild Guns was hard as shit for 10 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes. And then you could get the hang of it and like be good at it, kind of, and progress in the game. I just couldn't figure out how to not fucking die playing this game. I forced myself to get as far as I did. And
well, you should be commended for getting as far as you did while having so much trouble, because
so hard.
It is hard. I mean, this game is tough as nails, and it's known for that. It's notorious for its difficulty. Commend you.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know. I will say the best part of the game for me was the final boss on stage 3, where it starts out as 2 guys and then the big fucking skeleton comes up. That was an awesome fight, like climbing the walls and the ceiling and shit to avoid all that stuff. That was a really dope fight, and I praise awesome boss fights. Like that's what I'm here for. So
he's a Dark Souls guy, so it's kind of like big boss fights are kind of his thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna give it, even though I didn't really have fun other than that playing this game at all. I'm still gonna give it a 3 again. I'll give it a 3.
Okay. Now I will say I also thought that boss fight in particular, the level 3 boss fight, was my favorite boss fight. Did it remind you guys of Eddie from Iron Maiden at all? Do you guys know like the Eddie mascot?
The design of the character.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's who it reminded me of the entire time I was trying to fight him. But anyway, I thought that boss fight. Yeah, right. It's very possible. But yeah, I thought that boss fight was awesome.
Influenced by Iron Maiden.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I ended up giving the gameplay a 4.5. I really thought it was, for a run and gun, it's probably like the best it could be. The only issue that it didn't get a 5 for me was because of the slowdown, which I know is just like that's a system thing. But if I'm consistent, I've docked games that have had slowdown before, so I kind of have to continue to do that if that's what I'm going to do. So I didn't give it a 5 really just because of the slowdown. If they came out with like a ROM or something like that, or like a remake or a remaster or something like that, where the slowdown wasn't a thing anymore, then it's back up to 5 for me, because I had a ton of fun playing this game. Yes, it is hard, it's brutal, But the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it, and the more like the better I got at it. And it was challenging. It was also frustrating, but it was also the type of frustrating was like, I'm so close. I know I can beat this guy, like that kind of frustrating. So it just kept me coming back to keep playing it. I didn't play it on original hardware. I didn't play it on an emulator. Well, I guess I kind of played it on an emulator. I played it on the SNES Classic.
Cool.
But that controller is so dope. Like it's it's like OEM controller, so it's perfect. So the controls were, I thought, fantastic. The only issue I guess that I would have with like controls is just that even though you can kind of shoot in like an 8 directional sense, I didn't get the sense that I could like drag it further than that. It was like notched where you're either shooting straight up, you know what I mean, or like at an angle or straight to the right. I didn't feel like I could drag anything, maybe other than like the flame back and forth.
Yeah.
So I felt like it made certain, especially the boss at level 4, made it very, very hard to focus on the edges of that shield, because I'm like, okay, I have to do it like at a specific angle, and I feel like it just made it a little bit harder than I guess it needed to be. And then I think if there was one other area that I could say that it probably could have been a little bit more forgiving in, was, so you have continues and you have rests, right? And I always set my continues as high as it could be and the rests as high as it could be, right? And those combined, I think you get 7 rests for each continue on easy at least, which means essentially you have to beat the entire game only getting hit 21 times. Well, less than 21 times. That's tough, right? So I think that it could have been much more forgiving in the sense that maybe reset the rest if you beat the entire level, because it made it very, very difficult.
I think you could gain them as you like killed like certain people, right?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out how to. Was it like based on points,
I
or?
think it's points based, yeah.
Gotcha.
And I think you could use the Konami code on this game to get some extra lives.
Oh shit!
I should have tried that. And actually, when we started the podcast, I was like, "Oh man, I wonder if you could have used the Konami code." I'll go back and do it though, because I have a goal where I want to beat 25 games this year. So far, I'm at 5. I would like this one to be number 6. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to try the Konami code, and I'll count it as beaten. I don't care. This game's
not cheating. It's in
the game.
Yeah,
exactly. So I rated it a 4.5. What about you, Tyler?
It's got to be 5. It's just I think obviously a lot of that hinges on just my experience with it growing up, and how it made me love this genre of games. Really, this was the one. I had played Contra and Super C on the NES prior to it, but actually never owned either. I think I played them at friends' houses, and this was the first one I owned, and it was just, I just love running guns. I love just the adrenaline pumping games like this, with the soundtrack rocks, the scenery is just, post-apocalyptic. I love that stuff, and mix aliens with commandos, and it's just, I don't know. I'm a sucker for cheesy 80s sci-fi. Yeah, and so I just love the aesthetic. I love the gameplay. Obviously, that's what we're really talking about here. Yeah, it's so fast paced and fun, and especially as I've gotten older, I really appreciate it because it's not a long game. It's not a very long game. I think it's 6 stages long, but the 6th stage is like the size of 3 levels, and really you have to master. It takes a while to master the game. To beat it, it's going to take, just pinpoint accuracy, replaying these stages over and over again and mastering how the bosses and their patterns are, learning what weapons work best on what particular boss, and making sure you grab those weapons when they drop. If you miss the laser on the 5th stage, like right before you fight the boss on the 5th stage, like, oh, good luck. Like, you really need that laser. And so stuff like that, I don't know. It's cool because, I don't know, I always was good at this game. I always was good at games like it.
Yeah.
And so that just helped it appeal to me more. And the fact that I got so good at these kind of games, it became one of my favorite genres. And so I can't rate it anything less than a 5 on gameplay.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I think a lot of people would rate it a 5. Like I said, the only reason why I bumped it down to a 4.5 was because if I'm being consistent, I've knocked slowdown in every game that I've found it so far.
Yeah, and the Contra Hardcore on the Sega Genesis, oh, that game is impossible.
Is it?
But they got rid of the slowdown though, because it's that blast processing, really.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The blast processing.
Yeah.
We actually didn't mention the variety of weapons though. I would say again, just like in Space Megaforce, an amazing shmup for the SNES. My favorite weapon in this game were the homing missiles. Now, Tyler, did you have a favorite weapon?
My go-to was always the. I really liked the laser. Actually, I used to use it a lot, and the flamethrower. I think that those two, the flamethrower, like because you can have, you can actually have a reserve spot and switch weapons. I don't know if you guys knew that, but you can like hit the
R and L.
Yeah. Yep. When a weapon's dropping, you're like, if you hold one of those shoulder buttons, it goes into a second slot, and then you can switch between the weapons. So that really helps as you're playing, because certain enemies are better off with certain weapons. So, especially like by the third stage, like the laser and the flamethrower are really great in conjunction, especially with those like alien mosquitoes that try to like come and lift you and take you up into the sky. It's much better to have the flamethrower with them. But yeah, I mean, everybody loves the spread shot, but that's kind of iconic for Contra. But spread shot was actually never my favorite weapon.
Yeah, when I was using it, I was like, oh, this is the spread. This is like the Contra weapon, right? And then as I used it more and more, I'm like, it's not my favorite. You know what I mean? I think maybe I don't know if it's a little overhyped or if it was just so good in the first one that it's just kind of like carried on like its legacy throughout the Contra series or something. But I was I don't know. I didn't really gravitate towards it that much. While at least on this playthrough, you know what I mean? Maybe like you said, I could try it for like later on or something like that. But wasn't really that big a fan of it. But Yaiser, what was your favorite weapon?
I did like the spread shot. I feel like it helped against like the point you made earlier when like you can only shoot at like 12 o'clock, 1:30 or 3 o'clock. If you had the spread shot, you could cover all of it. You know what I mean?
All of it.
Yeah. So like that helped me because I fucking suck at the game. You know what I mean? So being able to shoot everywhere helped. Also, homing missiles just open up and it just hits people without me having to aim or whatever. That's very helpful for a person who fucking sucks at this game. So
that's my first favorite weapon, the homing missiles. They really come in handy at the end boss. The final boss.
I bet.
Yeah. It is a little unfortunate though. If you get hit, you lose your weapons right away, and I'm just like, oh man, like I really need that homing missile to. It's impossible for me to not get hit during a boss fight. So I lose my weapons pretty much immediately as soon as I get in there, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm back to the. I don't know what the original gun is called, but I just do that.
I think just machine gun,
yeah, just machine gun.
I mean, I got used to using that because
you kept getting hit.
Yeah.
So
I don't mind it at all.
That's fair. All right, let's move on to visuals. I'll start it off with visuals. I gave this one a 5, and normally I knock it down a little bit for for the slowdown for visuals, but aged will get the rest of it because the visuals were so nice and so clean in this game that I was just like, I can't give this anything other than a 5. When I was playing this game, I felt the same way as when I played Donkey Kong Country, and I was just like, this game is above the rest when it comes to visuals for the Super Nintendo to me. Just everything in the background, it looks so good. All the explosion effects, like I don't know. I don't really know that I could even really speak more on it. It was just it's that good. What about you, Tyler?
Oh, 100%, 5 stars. It's when I think about like a showpiece for the Super Nintendo, like just like you said, Donkey Kong Country comes to mind. Contra is way up there. And it's really not just the graphics alone, but I think the variety within the graphics and the stages. The fact that, you know, there's something to really be said about the art direction in a game. And especially back in those days, you didn't really have that so much, but you can feel it in this game. You can feel that they were inspired by the works of H.R. Geiger, the guy who designed all those stuff in Aliens, because there's so many little details and pieces, and you catch yourself looking at stuff and seeing stuff in the background that you never noticed before happening. I love the burned out city of the first stage, and just, I mean, there's such an attention to parallax scrolling, which gives you this back in the day, you know, that was the best way to conjure up a very three-dimensional environment.
Right.
And I feel like this game is one of the showpieces for that. And even like the top-down stages, really showing off the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 effects. That was something unique and different, because that's enough that you got to kind of place yourself in the time and place. And it was like the Super Nintendo was just upping everything. It was trying to give you a completely different experience than what you had on 8-bit. The leap from 8-bit Contra to this is just huge.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nintendo kind of sold it that way too, right? They basically said like, hey, this technology can't be used with your old console, but it's because the technology is that much more, it's just that much better, right? It's just that much more superior. And so I think they kind of had to show that, right, with some of their games, just to really showcase like, look, we're not joking around. You can't play this stuff on the 8-bit one. You really can't. Like, it's just not impossible.
Can't be done. Yeah, I mean, and it's like they're trying to make a statement. I feel like Konami with this game, that first stage boss. So if you recall, when he first pokes his head, breaks the door down, this turtle boss. This is like this mutant dinosaur turtle. It's just his head that kind of comes out at first, and so you're kind of used to these smaller sprite bosses on 8-bit Contra and, you know, the old school games. But then the whole wall breaks through and the rest of him comes out.
Yep.
And it's this giant boss that fills the entire screen. and there's like some scaling involved too. Like there's some Mode 7, and it felt like such a statement. Of like, this is next gen. This is the Super Nintendo. This is what we can do on here.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the graphics, the art design. I sometimes when I get to stage 3, I just stop and I don't even go the rest of I don't scroll to the rest of to the right. You know, I just stare at the screen. And I'm just taking in the clouds moving in the background and like the gritty, putrid look of the smokestacks and the factory kind of. There's this feeling of desperation throughout the entire game in its art design. You really feel like you're playing in a game where the world has been destroyed. Maybe not completely destroyed, but you're playing in the rubble. And I love it. I love it. Yeah, 5 stars.
Yeah, it's very good. And real quick before we get to Yaiser, I did think because I've seen like AVGN's videos and stuff like that on like the Contra series as like his Contra like retrospective and stuff. And I remember him specifically saying like, you know, Contra 3 is so much better than Contra Hardcore on the Genesis, except for those top-down stages. What were they thinking? Right. So I was like, man, I think I might have to knock, like just going into it before I'd even played it. I was like, I think I might have to knock the game due to those top down, right? Just kind of letting somebody else's opinion be my own for a second. And then playing it, I was like, nah, this looks good too. Like, this is fine. They were a little annoying at first, like just to kind of get the hang of, like L and R to turn your body and stuff instead of like, but I got used to it pretty quickly, and I would actually run through. Stage 2 is by far the cakewalk of the game to me. I fly through stage 2. But even like visually, like what they were able to do with that, with the top down and the decaying like city, and the road is falling apart when you walk across it and stuff like that. I thought that all looked amazing. So I couldn't even knock it for that. I thought it looked great.
Yeah.
What about you, Yaiser?
That's that. I mean, you guys make some great points here, but I wasn't quite at 5 with you guys, because when I think about this, like side by side with like a Donkey Kong Country, like that game is so like bright and beautiful, and all the colors are like all over. And I know that's not what this game's like going for, you know what I mean? Because it's obviously like alien invasion, like end of the world type of deal. It's like it's supposed to look like gritty, like that. Oh, that was probably pretty loud.
No, it sounded cool though.
I bet it did.
Yeah, it sounded like a guitar amp or something.
Yeah.
Can I do it again? No. But yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, like obviously it's supposed to be like darker and like less colorful because there's all this destruction and shit going on in the background. But I don't know, when I just, side by side with like a Donkey Kong Country, that game is just so bright and beautiful, and all the colors. I couldn't get to 5 with that game, like compared side by side to it. So I was at a 4 with it.
Okay.
Which is still, it's pretty good. I love all the character, the enemy sprites, and even all the world designs are really cool. All the bosses are dope as shit looking, but
the bosses look amazing throughout the game.
Just not as pretty. Say what you will about me for saying it's not pretty, but
it's not as pretty as Donkey Kong, but still graphically, I'm still blown away by it.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah. And Donkey Kong did come out 2 years,
a couple years after, I think.
Yeah.
All right. If that's all we have for visuals, let's move over to sound. Tyler, do you want to start us off in sound?
Oh, I'd love to. 5 stars. It's one of my favorite sound. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite soundtracks on the Super Nintendo for sure.
Yeah.
From the moment you're dropped into that city stage on the first stage, there's that crazy little ramp up that's, it's like, and then it goes into like the main melody. It's so adrenaline. It just gets my adrenaline pumping. And I think the way that they almost combined this kind of video game soundtrack mixed with like a really great sci-fi movie soundtrack, like it at times reminds me of movies like Predator or what they were already kind of paying homage to or ripping off, depending on how you want to look at it.
Paying homage is fine.
But what I want to highlight, if I'm going to say something about it, the sound design and the music, I have to go back to stage 3. And stage 3, unlike the other 2 stages, which were a little more focused on just like adrenaline and like fast pace, stage 3, I feel like they designed that music to match where you were in the stage. It was almost like they didn't have the technology there to really have AI figure out, where you were in the state, or computer programming skills to change the music based on where you were. But I feel like the composer took a guess as to how long it's going to take you to get from point A to point B, and he really designed the music to fit that. That it's weird. You'll be in parts of stage 3, and it's like the music kind of matches it. It's weird. It's hard to describe. There's all sorts of themes and melodies that flow in and out of stage 3, and you guys didn't get to stage 6, but that is literally a section where the music just goes incredible. It skyrockets. It's like it goes next level. there's parts where the music changes after. So there's like it's like a mini boss rush. That stage. It's like I told you earlier. It's like it feels like 3 stages put into one.
Yeah.
And there are moments where you get to a boss, and then the music shifts from the theme that it was doing into an almost like it feels like it's scored. It feels like they scored this. It's like almost like a composer looking at a movie. They scored this one boss fight section to kind of flow from the first section you were playing into this like wicked boss fight. And it's weird. And then you beat the boss, that like mini boss, has several bosses, and then it changes again. It like goes into these different suites. Like like music composition. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. Like, I feel like the Super Nintendo was really one of the only consoles at the time that could really handle that because of the very kind of real instruments that the Super Nintendo was able to kind of copy with its sound chip.
Yeah.
And I would recommend going and watching a video of Stage 6, that final stage, and just seeing how the music is designed around each section of that stage. It's really amazing.
I actually I did watch Stage 6, but I didn't watch it with the volume all the way up because I was trying to feed my son. So yeah, but I did watch it just to kind of see what it was all about, and it looks very difficult, and I'm kind of glad I didn't make it there right away. No, I do want to beat the game, so I do want to try and get there. But yeah, Yaiser, what about you for sound?
So from what I experienced, I didn't get quite as far in the game. But like I thought the music was really dope. I thought, but like I guess I'm gonna dock it a little bit for like none of it. I don't think tomorrow I'll be like humming these songs. You know what I mean? They're not like gonna stick with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought because I listened to a little bit of the soundtrack too on YouTube, like before we started recording, and all the songs, they sounded like awesome, like very well composed. So like I gave it a high score. I didn't quite give it a 5 because I guess I didn't get to experience like the way you're talking about it sounds like watching The Wizard of Oz and listening to The Dark Side of the Moon at the same time. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm
which is just fucking awesome.
Yeah. But, no, I definitely am a little. I'm very, if you can't tell, very smitten with this game. It's one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah.
And I think if you're playing it and you're like you got the music really cranked up, you'll experience, because it kind of matches the emotion of like what you're going through as you're your nails are clawing the desk and you're freaking out. It's so difficult. It really it's an experience.
Yeah, I thought the music was dope. I'm at a 4 here. That's what I wrote. 4 down. 4 stars.
I ended up right in the middle of you guys. Actually, I hit 4.5, and a little bit of what Yaiser said. I didn't feel like anything was like super catchy. Am I going to add this to my? It's always kind of my. Is it a 5-star? Because like, how many tracks of it am I going to add to my video game playlist on Spotify? So I don't know that there's necessarily a bunch of those that I'm going to add, but it does exactly what it's supposed to do for the game. It makes you feel rushed, which is obviously like the point, right? You're supposed to feel under like a tremendous amount of pressure playing the game. I certainly felt that pressure for sure playing the game. And there's a couple stages that stood out to me. I think, which stage is the one where you're on the bike? Is that stage 3?
4.
Okay. That one I believe has an insane bass line, just like it's constantly it's going off a wall, that bass line.
Yeah, there's constantly melodic bass.
Yeah, it's very good.
Like going in and out of the melodies, and that's a stage that really switches up the melodies too, because it kind of starts off one way and then it shifts into like a really breezy. So it's like kind of like really like pounding. It's that it's really adrenaline, and that's another part where they actually could time the music. So you start off in the tunnel on that stage, and you're fighting all those aliens in the tunnel, and so if you make it out of the tunnel, the music I feel like is timed so that when you get out of the tunnel, it becomes you suddenly the tunnel opens up and you see all the parallax and the environment behind you. It's like scrolling. You're in this like desert, and I feel like the music like totally becomes breezy at that point. It turns into this like melodic change happens. There's a shift, and sorry, I'm interrupting your spot, but
no, you're good.
Yeah.
But no, I was just gonna say that that bass line. I heard that and I was like, that's wicked good. Like that's something I for sure have to make note of on the show. I don't know. I landed at 4.5 though, because I just felt like it was the music throughout was really good. There was no point where I was just like, oh, this music is like nothing's really going on here. No, like it was constant the entire time. Just constantly feeling like you're under pressure to get everything to get through this level. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what I feel like it's meant to do for the game. So, yeah, I landed at a 4.5 for it. And all the sound effects was like the guns and all the explosions and everything. All that was really, really good. So there's no docking it for that. I do think the guy screaming sometimes that's a little like it's like or something like that. Not much there. Yeah. Yeah, not much there for the guy screaming, but I'm not going to dock it anything for that. No, I felt like the sound was really, really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's move over to aged. Yaiser?
So, given the fact that I mean it looks so well, the soundtrack is awesome. I mean the gameplay, it feels great. I just was so bad at it. I can't blame can't blame the game for like how bad I was at it, because all the control, it was so smooth, and it didn't age. It didn't feel old. It just felt hard as shit. So like, I think it aged pretty well here. I'll give it like a 3.5.
Okay. What about you, Tyler?
How it's aged? Let's see. I think I'll give it a 4.5. I'm going to dock it a little bit on aged because of the top-down stages. I love the top-down stages. I get them, but I think that there's a lot of people who, and you've heard this, from Angry Video Game Nerd and James. He's not wrong per se when it comes to the top-down stages. Really, they're fun and they're an interesting break in pace. But that's also the problem, is that the pacing of the game is one way throughout, and then all of a sudden it kind of comes to a bit of a halt on those stages, that fast paced. And I'm not bothered by them. I know when I was a kid they were my least favorite stages. Yeah. And so I think if I think those stages, while I don't have a big problem with them, I know that a lot of people could possibly, because the controls are different. They take some getting used to. And in that sense, I don't think it's aged well on those stages. So I'm going to dock it a point, or a half a star, because I feel like if those stages were a little bit more tied to the core gameplay of the rest of the game, then it probably would have helped soften some of those issues that people find themselves having with it. Because when enough people complain about something, they're probably not wrong. There's something that they probably could have done a little bit better. So yeah, I think that the age, definitely those stages don't help with that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, but actually for a different reason. It's not really due to the top downs at all. I thought the top down was fine. I actually didn't mind the change of pace, but maybe that's just because I'm not normally a Contra guy. So it was just like,
it's like a little bit of a break.
Yeah, finally, I'm not like just
reprieve.
Yeah, people just shooting things at me constantly. No, I actually didn't mind the bit of a break there. I didn't give it a 5 because of the slowdown. I just feel like that just shows the technology restrictions, I guess, at the time, the limitations, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's really the only reason why this game seems like it's aged poorly, and that's it. So I landed on a 4.5.
4.5 is not very poorly. So
it's not poorly at all. You know what I mean? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right. So total scores here. We have Yaiser came in at the lowest with a 3.5, then me at a 4.4, and then Tyler came in at a 4.7. Would you say, Tyler, this is like one of your favorite games of all time? Does it hit favorite game of all time status for you, or is it?
Yeah, it's in my top 10. I actually did a video on my top 10, and this was on it. It's near the bottom of my top 10, but
I watched that video. I couldn't remember where it was. I just remember that Phantasy Star Online was up there, and I love that game. That game is so dope.
Yeah, this is there as well, and it's one of those titles that I remember as I got older appreciating it more for a lot of the reasons I talked about here. You know, just like the feeling that it gave me, that sense of dread and urban decay. It's something I love in film. You know, some of my favorite movies are like Aliens and stuff like that, and you know, Children of Men is one of my favorite movies. That came out a lot later, but just anything that's post-apocalyptic like that, I love those kind of films. And I feel like this game really captures that essence, and more so than a lot of games, I feel like I'm playing through a movie in this game, but in this style. Like I know, like games became more cinematic and more like movies as time went on, but in this kind of run and gun action arcade genre, I feel like there's almost no better game to make you feel like you're playing through an 80s action movie, sci-fi action movie than Contra 3. And I love it for that. I love even when you, and especially that breath, you can just, that breath of like sigh of relief when you finally beat it too. You've mastered it, and you
I haven't experienced it yet, but I can imagine it's awesome.
The feel, that's I think that's part of what has always made it so memorable and such a big moment for me, a big game for me, is that I beat it, you know, on hard. I went hard on this game.
Yeah,
and
that's crazy.
To have that triumph, that the feeling of satisfaction, like I did it. Oh my gosh. Like, you know, I felt like Louis Tully when he thought he helped all the Ghostbusters, you know, take out the slime, the museum on the slime on the museum. That's a totally off topic thing. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, he's like, I did it. I'm a Ghostbuster. I did it. And that's what I felt like, you know. It's like I still remember that feeling of just absolute victory and triumph over this game, and so that stayed with me through the years. And it's I think there's something to be said about games back then. Is that, yeah, sure, they were short, and I think a lot of people tend to write some games off as like, oh, it's like, you know, but like, man, if this was your only game, or you had like 5 games, I'm sure, and granted, a lot of people know I didn't just have 5 games, I had a lot of games, but still, I could imagine like those who only had a few games, and this was one of them, and you spent your whole summer just mastering that game and working on it every day, and, oh, I'm getting a little bit farther, oh man, I finally figured out how to beat stage 3 boss, you know, just plugging away at it. And then when you finally beat it, it's like, I don't know. I think that's missing in a lot of games today. There's a lot of hand holding.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of hand holding, and plus just all these games are so readily available, right? I mean, if you don't like Contra 3, or if you beat it and you're just like, yeah, I beat it on easy, I'm not going to go ahead and beat it on normal, you can just download a new ROM and play a new game, right? Back then, if Contra 3 was, you know, like you're saying, one of the only 3 games that you had, and you already beat the other 2, and you beat it on easy, and they're like, go beat it on hard, you idiot, you suck at the game. Then you're going to be like, all right, well, yeah, I guess my birthday isn't for another 8 more months anyway. I might as well, you know what I mean? I'm not going to get another game until then. Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, people would definitely play it way more back then. But if somebody came to you, Tyler, and said, hey, I've never played Contra 3 before, would you recommend that I go get it, or however, any means necessary to play it, you know, whether they need to download it, whatever the case may be, would you recommend that they go do that and play the game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think if you're getting into Super Nintendo games and Super Nintendo collecting, I think it's a game that you have to have in your collection. It's one of those essential Super Nintendo games, and I think that's why Nintendo even put it on the SNES Mini. I think they knew it was one of the best games on the platform, and it's iconic. It's beloved. You know, it doesn't reach the heights of, like, you know, Link to the Past and Donkey Kong Country and stuff like that. But I think it's one of the greatest. It's one of the greatest experiences I ever had playing a game, quite frankly. And I don't know what that's like coming at it from a perspective of today, like experiencing it, but experiencing it back then, it surely was like that for me.
It's hard sometimes because I think that you know, we get slack sometimes for giving like some notoriously good games some not so notoriously good ratings, but the fun part I think of our show is that I'm pretty well versed in retro games. I've played them for a long time. I played them all the time growing up. Yaiser here, he hasn't really. He grew up with, you know, three other the whole family that played video games before he got to, essentially, right? So Yaiser, your first console wasn't really until like the GameCube, right?
My first like personal console, I think, was the GameCube. Yeah, and then I got
right, because your brothers pretty much dominated everything else until they moved out, correct?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so he didn't really have like the chance to like grow up with like an NES or a Super Nintendo or like a Sega Genesis. So when we're playing these games from like the 80s, early 90s, he's playing all these for the first time. So these are all experiences that he's experiencing right now in real time with no nostalgia glasses. So I think it's a good like little balancing act we have here, where I'm like, I've played this game 1,000 times. I love it. There's no way I'm giving this any less than a 5, right? But like he's like, it's not that fun, dude. Relax. You know what I mean? Like it's like I've never played it before, but it's not that great. So but I enjoy the little bit of a balancing act. But that being said, Yaiser, even though that you were the lowest on the game, you still gave it a pretty high score considering other games that you've graded so far at a 3.5. Would you recommend that somebody plays this game?
I think if you're up for a challenge and like you love like this generation, like SNES games, and like I said, you're up for the challenge, then yeah, sure. Because if I played it more, if I had time to like learn the levels, to learn where to not fuck up, then sure, I probably would have had more fun with it. But like the frustration got to me as a 34-year-old,
Yeah. Well, and another thing that must be said is that it's a better game with 2 players. It really is. I love the single player experience, but it really is better playing with 2 people, because you're in it together, and you're shouting at your buddy, oh, go up here, do this or do that, and it's a shared experience kind of game, because it is so difficult, and you can experience that difficulty together, with a friend.
Well, we were supposed to get some gameplay earlier this week of both of us, but Yaiser wasn't feeling so hot, so he kind of just stayed home, and I stayed at my house, and we kind of played it just separately. But we do eventually plan on getting together here to try and get some gameplay, like co-op gameplay of it.
Cool, yeah.
Once we get that together, I'm sure, it's always that situation, right, where this game's a lot of fun by itself, but man, together it was so much better. For example, we played NFL Blitz last season, and man, like I don't know if we would have rated that game as highly if we played it by ourselves. You know what I mean? But we only played it against each other.
So. Arcade style, like that one, got to play it with a friend. Couch co-op. I mean, that's the way it was back in the day. And sitting right beside somebody, experience looking. What? Oh my gosh! What? It's crazy! Oh, it's insane. The reactions. I mean, to go back to Contra, like when the third stage boss, when you beat those 2 robot guys that you were talking about, and then like the hands come through the wall and it opens up to reveal this like giant metal Terminator robot. that was the kind of like shocking thing that you like turned to your buddy and screamed. I remember, and then it's like, oh my gosh, it's a rush to figure out what do you do to now beat this boss.
Right.
There's just so many moments like that, especially by the time you get to the end of the game. And it's that thing that co-op experience, that shared experience, that when you finally beat this game on the hard difficulty and you beat the final form, because you don't get the final form of the boss, of the very final boss. You don't get his final form unless you play it on hard.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's crazy.
You could beat it on normal and you still haven't seen the whole game. If you beat it on hard, he chases you. Well, spoiling, I guess, but
you can spoil.
If on normal you just kind of beat him and then you get saved as the thing blows up, the helicopter comes down and you jump onto the missile and it lifts you up out of the alien cavern and you're done. Well, on hard, the boss opens his eyes again at the bottom as the helicopter's lifting you out, and then you have another boss fight where he's chasing you up through the cavern.
Oh god!
And you're having to then. So it's a huge it's a crazy moment.
Yeah, play the game. You know what I mean? Like, I recommend that you all play the game. It's a good game. All right. Our buddy DMCPCRT over at TikTok and Twitch. Not every episode, but every once in a while, he likes to drop in with his opinions of Contra 3. And man, check out his review. He absolutely loved it. So here's the video from DMC.
This was me before I played Contra 3. And this is me after I played Contra 3. That's right, we're talking about Contra 3, the Alien Wars for the Super Nintendo this week on the DMC drop-in for Reliving Retro. Story? Who needs a story? The aliens invade, they destroy a megacity, wiping out a total populace, and thus the Alien Wars begin. Bill declares it's time for revenge, and Lance agrees that they must attack aggressively. And aggressively, you do attack. Tons of weapons are at your disposal, from a stock rifle that fires a never-ending stream to the famous shotgun that clears out waves of enemies. Heck, even the flamethrower and the laser are useful in this version of Contra. Do you want to ride in a giant tank? You can. Do you want to fire at enemies and also run enemies over at the same time? You can! Also at your disposal is a giant bomb that clears enemies on screen and does massive damage to bosses. Speaking of, the bosses in this game are challenging and exciting. Discover the pattern to ensure victory. Contra 3 also introduces an overhead mode with the objective to clear out enemy turrets. This mode was surprisingly fun and maybe even my favorite, including the dizzying alien stage. There's also a good amount of climbing, which becomes very tricky and challenging when you're flying on freaking missiles while trying to fight a boss. Not only does the game attack enemies aggressively, it also attacks the audio with power. The weapons sound great, the sound effects complement the world, and the music absolutely slaps. No, I mean it actually slaps. Listen to this bass line. Not only is Contra 3 a treat for the ears, but it's also a treat for the eyes. Excellent sprite work paired with detailed backdrops really paint the future that this game takes place in. Some great set pieces and sequences also help to drive the action to super new heights. All of this comes together to be a fantastic, challenging game that continues to be worth playing to this day, and maybe all the way to the year 2636. This isn't your grandpa's Contra. This is Contra 3. Contra 3. Contra 3. Thanks again for having me on. My name is DMCPCRT. You can find me at that handle on TikTok or on Twitch, where we stream every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thanks again, and cheers.
All right, thanks, DMC. Really, really appreciate that. Go check out DMC on TikTok and on Twitch. Same name, both platforms, DMCPCRT. He loves the name. Definitely go check him out. Now's the part of the show where we randomize what game we're going to play next week, and we have our guest guess it. So let's get ready here. Are you ready? I'm going to give you some hints.
Okay.
We have a Super Nintendo platformer released in 1991, developed and published by Nintendo.
Super
And
Mario World?
It is Super Mario World. Very
Yeah.
good. Yep. Pretty pumped to play this one, and it's just absolutely coincidental that we are announcing that we're going to play this game on Mario Day.
That is cool, yeah.
Just thought that was pretty dope. Yaiser, I think your face died or something, buddy. There we go.
There you go, yeah.
That was an awesome freeze frame, though.
No, it wasn't.
Did you see
pretty
it?
terrible, yeah.
I got to get that framed for sure.
Well,
that was great.
everything
Yeah,
else
we are
did.
playing Super Mario World, and our guest next week is Nintendo Collecting. If you guys don't follow Nintendo Collecting on YouTube, be sure to do it. Guy has an amazing Nintendo collection. Like, it's insane. His entire basement, everything. He has like a Nintendo-themed poker table. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
Oh,
That is a great channel. I haven't watched it in a while. Y'all actually just reminded me about it. I used to watch his channel, and it's been a while. So,
He actually took a little bit of a hiatus for like a year or
Okay.
so, but he's back. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to have him on there. He's one of the first YouTubers I think I've ever even subscribed to when I made my YouTube channel back in like 2012 or something like that. You know what I mean? I've been watching him for a long time. So definitely go check out his channel, and, be sure to come back with us next week as we talk about Super Mario World. Tyler, do you have a recommendation for our show?
I do. Let's keep it in this is my recommendation, would be to go after another Konami Super Nintendo classic. And but this one's a little more cult. And the one I'm talking about is Sunset Riders.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Really, really, it's another run and gun. A lot of people call it Contra, the Wild West game, Western Contra. But
Right.
so if you played Wild Guns,
Mhm.
then it's like that, but Contra, side-scrolling action, and it's really another classic. I think, Yasser, I think you would probably like it more. I think, I don't know. I just kind of think based on what you were saying, that maybe detracted things from Contra for you. I think you'll
Mhm.
enjoy Sunset Riders more.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I
We'll give it
can't
a
wait to
shot.
play that one.
Mhm.
Tyler, is there anything else you want to say about Contra 3, or do you want to tell these people where they can find you one last time?
Contra 3, it's I think I've probably said my piece about it. Watch out for the dogs on stage 1 if you're playing on normal. It catches you off guard if you start on easy, and those dogs will not fight you. But they all of a
Didn't know
sudden
that.
they
Thank you.
become demon dogs if you play on normal, and they'll chase you. So watch out for demon dogs. That's a lesson for life, actually. And yeah, you can find me just by searching on YouTube, My Retro Life. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, that sort of thing. And would love to have you check out the content. It's a huge passion project, as we talked about earlier in this. And it means a whole lot to me. It's very special for me to share these personal stories and show the old home movie footage, and also just get to share, my gaming past with so many people. It's been a huge blessing.
Of course.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely go check out My Retro Life on YouTube.
Mhm.
Everything Tyler does over there is amazing. So definitely check that out. And that's it for us for this week. So thank you so much, Tyler, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And like I said before, everybody go check out his YouTube channel, My Retro Life.
Thank you, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Peace.
All right. Take care.
See ya.